Hi, I'm Artex. I've been around the internet learning how to draw, but I'm pretty new to making art videos, and I've always wanted to try it out, so I guess here I am making one. I want to say first that I forgot to record the sketching phase of this fan art slash study, and the purpose of this is I want to see if I can repaint the original Sona splash art and make it slightly better, or just better. And also I got lazy in recording the completion of this piece, so I just stopped opening my OBS. But still, I hope you'll find this video useful in your art journey. Okay, moving on. Before I started everything like the sketching phase, coloring, etc., I first looked at Sona's old splash art. There's actually two versions of this. There's the global version and then there's the Chinese version. The Chinese version looks more anime compared to the original, and the original is more on semi-realistic. So what I did was, I saved those two images plus her latest skin, the Victorious Sona one, and put those three images in a collage. These are going to be my base references that I'm gonna copy and try to mix all of their styles into one and then do my own touch and adjustments. But anyway, back to the splash art. First, I analyzed it as a whole. Like, what are the colors that were used? What parts of the piece or what part of her body is lining up with the rule of thirds? What's her pose and the angle of the camera or perspective? Just basic stuff like that. Once I'm done analyzing it, I started to do some colored balls and experiment with the base colors. I learned this from Ahmed Aldoori. I'll put a link in the description. You basically make a circle selection with a round lasso tool and fill it with the base color. Add some shadow and some bounce light. You can also put a light on top, but it's optional. Then I color pick the balls and make my own color palette. Like for example, once I got a color by color picking, I then make more colors that are neighboring that color by adjusting the color wheel and shifting its brightness and saturation a bit so it harmonizes and doesn't stray away too much. It's like color theory and color harmony. I think other art YouTubers cover this and they have a better explanation for this. So you'll have to check them out on your own. Once I'm done with the colored balls, I then sketch her body. I think I started with a gesture trying to copy her original pose, and then just adjusting it bit by bit until I got satisfied. Then I used simple shapes to draw her body. Then I was thinking, I wanna go a bit wild and experiment with the perspective, and made the camera higher because it just felt better that way. I noticed that the pose that I came up with is a little boring, so I adjusted her leg a bit so it's lifted up, kinda like her Victorious skin. I also have sketched the harp and the outer part of her clothes that are floating and opening up like flowers petals. When I felt happy with the pose, I then proceed with making a cleaner sketch on another layer. Just trace over the old one and not make it too messy. This is also the part where I gave her clothes. If I'm ever confused with how any part of her body is posed or shaped, like for example the breasts because they're a little advanced and complicated, I always use contour lines to help me understand it. And speaking of clothing, her clothes has two parts. There's an inner dress with a dark blue and then there's a jacket with a cyan color. I didn't notice this the first time, but it's something you have to take note when making a study or a fan art of an existing character. I noticed that when I was making the floating parts of our clothes, that if I curve its shape, then I'm just making it unnecessarily complicated. so I just went with the flat shapes. When doing another sketch on top of your sketch, remember to correct things if they look wrong, like for example the perspective. When I drew the strings, it's enough to just use lines because I'm gonna use a fatter brush anyway when I start to paint it for real. To make this less confusing and for a bit of clarity, I decided to add values behind the sketch layer. I only put values on where I think the shadows and the cast shadows will be, as well as if something's not that important and it's just sitting on the background. But it's really up to you in how you use values. And now for the fun part, painting with colors. The rule of thumb in painting colors is that I heard that you have to start with the base color, and depending on what you started with, it's gonna influence with how colors will mix in your painting. So I just made a commitment with using red as my base. The way that I color is, I'll color pick from my palette, make a stroke, then color pick the color that was created from the base color and from the brush stroke that I made, and then do another brush stroke with that new color. I kept repeating this until I found a color that I'm satisfied with, and painted the whole section that needs that color, like for example the hair. One good trick to remember when it comes to painting is to always make a new layer whenever you're making a stroke, then erase the excess and then merge it. It's much cleaner and faster than to mess up your base color layer. You can also decide to not merge it, but it depends on your use case. The benefit of not merging layers is that you'll have an easier time fixing mistakes or making adjustments later. But I just prefer to merge it down because it lags my Krita, because I'm using like 3 to 6K resolution on 300 dpi. At this point, all I'm thinking about is to just keep painting and just keep painting, not worry about mistakes and just keep painting. Now speaking of background colors, you'll notice that I used a warm color background just to mimic the references. I think I was incorrect, but I went with it anyway. I think it's better to just commit to something, even if it's a mistake, because you can just fix it later, rather than go halfway and then be unsure, because whenever you're doubtful, it will show in your painting. You'll notice that as I'm painting the body, even though I'm kinda trying to copy the reference, it's not exactly the same because I'm looking at my phone for my other references. What I did when I'm not using my computer is I downloaded multiple images that are similar to her body type and her clothes. The problem with references is that they have a different lighting. So I'll have to try and adapt to the lighting that I came up with for my study. Now when it comes to painting the harp, I just realized that I have no freaking clue what I'm doing, and that I have never painted metal before. So I just tried to mimic how the original was painted. But next time I'll try to study this. And like I said at the beginning, I'm sorry if I didn't record the completion of this study, so I'll just briefly explain what I did. I brightened the skin because I think the one that I started with was too dark. Then I tried my best to render the clothes and make the harp kinda believable that it's metal. As for the hair, I used many brush strokes to make it look layered. But I think I made it too layered. But I'm still working on my techniques because it's different from Photoshop. I started with Photoshop in Windows, but I switched to Linux, so I have to relearn all of the techniques that I learned from Photoshop and transfer it to Krita. I also copied the width, like there's some gradient darks on the sides like from the original. I think it helps with making her the focal point. For the mist things on their hands, I'm still trying to study on how people do that in splash arts. But as you can see, here's the completed study. If you have any questions, just ask me down at the comments. And I hope you learned something from this video.